A lot of people talk about this, and those who have not experienced it will be like, this sounds like a bunch of hocus pocus baloney. Like, it's actually really true. It's like when you give your mind freedom, it accesses like different portals and finds solutions.
Yeah, just giving yourself that ability to think as opposed to just doing. And I think we all know that, but giving yourself that, because what you're saying is, how am I supposed to step away for a month? And I feel the same way. Like, how am I not supposed to be there for 5 days? What am I, like, are you serious? Like, I have this to do, I got that to do, I got that to do. And sometimes you just got to do it and, you know, plan it ahead, you know, let everybody know and then see what comes out of it.
All right, so 2.5 million followers between all the different social media outlets, and just all around a really cool person working on some amazing things, you know, in the middle of launching a media company, which got my attention because that's kind of what I'm doing too. So lots of fun things to talk about with the one and only from Minority Mindset, Mr. Jaspreet Singh. Thanks for being on set, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, man. It's awesome to be here. Really cool office, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. No one ever really wants to like come to Gaithersburg, Maryland. So when Jaspreet messaged me, he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna be in the area." I'm like, "But you gotta come into my set. We can actually do an in-person interview." We're gonna talk about some really cool stuff today, which I actually don't know where we're gonna take the conversation. But you've done some tremendous things. I've followed you on YouTube for a long time. You've interviewed some amazing people, built a massive following of 2.5 million-ish people now, right? Because 1.6 million, I think you said, on YouTube, 800,000 on Instagram. I just want to say, as someone who's doing social media and organic right now, like, hats off.
Well, thank you, man.
It is hard. So I was telling Jaspreet earlier before we started filming, I was like, hey, my short game is on point. Like, I'm so good at shorts. No one cares about my long form videos. What are you doing? So maybe we'll dissect some of that. But also just you're still very young. I feel like I can say that because, like, I'm kind of hitting 39 now. Well, I'm past 39. I'll be 40 this year. And you're still in your early 30s. So I feel like, you know, I'm jealous, man. I want to go back to my early 30s. So
all young, man.
I know. It's just, you know, I feel old now because I got a kid and, like, my life is, like,
it's
structured.
a beautiful, beautiful chapter of life, right?
Very beautiful chapter. You're 100% right. I completely agree. So, man, right before we got started, you dropped an interesting little bomb on us, and you're like, you got a law degree, but you never practiced. Tell me about that.
So I grew up with very traditional parents from India, where in my house, as you know, I was given two options. I can either go out, study hard, and become a doctor, or I can be a failure. Those were the only two options that I had. And my parents were very, very strict on this, that, like, from the day I turned 1, they started telling everybody from America to India that Jaspreet is going to be a doctor. When I was in 8th grade.
So and you were born in America,
I was born in America.
Okay.
When I was 12 years old in 8th grade, I was really struggling in my English class because at home we spoke Punjabi and, you know, English wasn't my first language and I just wasn't good at it. So my parents got me a tutor. I'm 12 years old in 8th grade, but they didn't give me a tutor for the English class that I was struggling in. They got me a tutor to get me ready for the medical college admission test, the MCAT, which is the test you take in college to get into medical school. And so here I am, 12 years old. The tutor comes to the door and he's like, okay, let's get this kid into medical school. And he looks at me, he's like, him? And so that's how strict my parents were when it came to...
You were Doogie Howser. At least the tutor probably taught that, right?
You know, I didn't think anything of it because, you know, I wanted to become successful. I wanted to take care of my parents. And so I thought, you go to school, you get good grades, you'll be able to make money and take care of your parents. And I thought, you know, I thought it was like directly linearly correlated. The harder you work in school, the better grades you get, the more successful financially you'll become. That was kind of the way I was raised. I knew nothing about money. Like I didn't know what investing was. I didn't know what dividends were. I don't know what passive income was. Like these were things that were completely foreign concepts. The only thing that I knew was like biology, science, math. Those were what I was told to focus on. That's all I knew. And then I go to college, and I guess it started off in high school.
Now, just real quick, are you an only child?
I have a younger brother.
You have a younger brother. Okay.
And in high school, I started working at weddings, Indian weddings. We were just talking about that. And that's what kind of gave me the first like entrepreneurial bug because I started making a little bit of money. I was working at weddings. I was working with DJs, doing a bunch of things, having a lot of fun while making a little bit of money. And I was like, wait, I don't need a degree to make money. And it just didn't make sense. I thought maybe I was doing something illegal, but it's like $50 isn't going to make anyone that upset, right? So I was just like, just doing whatever, having fun. And I started working with more DJs, and they were like, how about we start hosting teen parties? This is when I was 16. And I said, okay, let's do it. Like, I got nothing to lose. So I did this all in secret. My parents didn't know that I was doing this, but I started hosting these teen parties at local Indian restaurants because they needed marketing and exposure. So they would give us the venue for free, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. It was just like normal. And so I started doing these little teen parties, making a little, like the first party we made $2 for me and $2 for the DJ, so that was a profit. So it was just
awesome.
fun, right?
Yeah.
We were just having a good time.
Yeah.
And then I go to college. I'm like, all right, time for me to get serious and become a doctor. I didn't know people go to college to party or drink. Like, I had no idea. My parents didn't go to university here and stuff.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to the University of Michigan.
Okay.
So I go to college.
That's a big party school too, I think.
And I didn't know anything about, like, I didn't even visit the school before I got there. I applied to one college. Like,
Okay.
I was so, like, unfamiliar with the process. Like, I applied to one school. I got into the one school that I applied to. It was like a Wednesday, and I told my mom that I'm leaving. She was in the kitchen. My dad's at work. She's like, where are you going? I said, college. She said, when are you coming back? I said, I don't know. that was like, no one knew what the process was. So I went to college. And I brought a sleeping bag, a microwave, and a couple other things. I didn't even have a towel with me. Like, I didn't know what to do.
Wow.
And I get there, and everybody is partying, drinking. And I was like, what the heck? Where am I?
Yeah.
And how are you spending all this money on things that cost, like, alcohol is expensive?
Yeah.
Now, I never drank. I don't drink. I wasn't into partying, although I hosted some of the parties. But I was like, this is an opportunity for me because I don't party, I don't drink, but I need something to do on Friday nights.
Yeah.
So that was when I started going to, like, all the local clubs, venues, bars, restaurants, knocking on the doors. Literally, I was 17 years old when I went to college. And I was like, can I host a party here? And in the beginning, it was really hard because they were like, yeah, you can. It's just a $10,000 like room rental fee.
Yeah.
I was like, $10,000? Like, that seemed like such a large amount of money back then, where it was like, who the heck has $10,000?
Even today, I mean, it's still,
Yeah, and
it's
when
an
you're-
early commitment. It's a lot of money. Yeah.
Especially when you're 17 in college, it's like, it's such an insane amount of money. And I was like, I can't do that. And I kept going. I don't know why. I just did. And I ended up at this one club that was like, yeah, you could do a party here. We won't charge you anything. Just give us 50% of the revenue that you bring in, like from the cover charge. I said, okay. And so now I'm in business, and now I needed a DJ. So I made the same deal with my DJ. I said, look, you take 50% of whatever I generate, and I won't have to pay you anything. So now the club is taking 50%, the DJ is going to take 25, and I'm left with 25, but I don't have to spend any money doing it. And now I got into the party promoting business at 17, and that slowly started to grow. And it went from like one-off parties to then having a contract with the largest club on campus for our college night party every week, to also hosting our own monthly events, to hosting like concerts, shows. Like, we were, making good money in college. But the problem was, I hated what I was doing because I did it just for the money. And this is like that time where I learned I was making money because I wanted to kind of chase money.
Yeah.
But I hated it because I didn't like promoting alcohol. I didn't like the scene. I didn't like the industry. I was dealing with a lot of shady people and a lot of dirty things. Like, the entertainment industry is very shady, very dirty, and it's like physically taxing. Like, there was a lot of fights that, like, physical fights that you had to break up, and it was just not something that I wanted to be around. But I knew that I wanted to do something different, and that was when I started to realize I didn't want to be a doctor. So towards the end of my college career,
How many years into? So this is like your first 4 years. Your
my first 4 years in college,
Yeah.
I took my MCAT, the test to get into college, between year 2 and year 3.
Okay.
And that was around the time where I started investing in real estate. So I didn't talk about this, but I had some cash saved up. I took my MCAT on August 22nd, and August 23rd, the next day, I closed on my first rental property.
Wow.
And this was like 2011, I believe. So we're talking about right after the 2008 crash.
Yeah.
I'm in Metro Detroit, where property values are hit very hard. I mean, we had like
it was the worst. I
the
think.
worst,
Yeah, it was
the
like
absolute worst. Like, we had property selling for, the property that I bought, it had sold for over $150,000, went into foreclosure. The banks couldn't sell it. They listed it on the market for $8,400. It was a 1,000 square foot condo, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. It was listed for $8,400. I made an offer for $4,000. We ultimately came to a deal at $8,000. I had them down at $7,000, but then somebody else made an offer, and so they were like, created a little bidding war. So I offered $8,000, and so I bought the condo for $8,000. again, I had no idea what I'm doing. Like I don't know what real estate investing was. I started reading books, and that's where I started learning about this real estate investing stuff. Like I didn't know any real estate investors. I had no experience with this, so I just bought it, and then I was like, I'll figure it out. And so I did. It was there's a lot of people that talk about the magic and amazing parts of real estate investing and passive income. It was none of that when I first got started. It was like just a complete like headache, trying to find a good contractor. How do you find a property manager? What is a property manager? How do you get licensed with the city? How do you find an attorney? How do you not overpay? Like it was a big mess, but I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And this is where I was like, I want to do something different. Medicine isn't for me. So before graduating college, I told my parents that I'm not going to be a doctor. And my parents like couldn't believe it. Like my mom like literally almost had a heart attack. It took her like a year and a half to actually believe that her son wasn't going to be a doctor.
Now, do you have a lot of doctors in your family, like cousins and just like close family friends? Like, is it a trend in your family?
Not that many. Like my uncle is a doctor. But like medical doctors, not like that. My dad is a veterinarian.
Okay.
But no one else is really a doctor.
Got it. So did you ever end up taking the MCATs? Because
I took the MCAT.
Okay. And did you ever, sorry, you did say you took the MCATs. I meant, did you ever end up applying to med school?
I didn't apply to medical school.
Okay. So it was between the MCATs and like the applications having to go out. You were like, I'm not doing this anymore.
But that was when my parents were like, you have to get some sort of professional degree if you want to maintain any pride in the family. So it was like, well, what does that mean? They're like, you have to go and become an attorney at the very least. And I was like, okay, well, I can be an attorney, but and I'm starting to research law school, and I was like, oh, I can do law school part-time, which means I can do my business full-time. And so that was the big allure for me. And I liked the idea of learning the law because every aspect of business involves law at some point.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that, but I kind of read about it. So I was like, I can get some business application here. I couldn't get into business school because I was really bad in economics. Like I almost failed my economics class. I kept falling asleep in the class. So like that wasn't an option. So I got into law school. It took me 4 years to graduate law school. So typically it takes 3. It took me an extra year because I did the last year and a half part-time. And while I was in law school, I was working on my own businesses full-time. And so first it was like real estate. So I was doing real estate investing. I had built up some properties, and then I started real estate wholesaling. And then I did, I wanted something scalable. So that was when I got on the internet and I started a sock company. I created my own water-resistant sock. I launched that.
I thought you said stock.
Socks,
I was like, did I really
socks.
hear him say
The
sock?
thing you wear on your feet.
Okay, wow, okay.
So I got into that textile business, which I never expected. But for me, I learned by doing. I'm kind of like I just do it and then I figure it out after.
Yeah.
And so I started doing socks, and my goal was to license the technology because I found a way to like incorporate this waterproof technology with the yarn that you use for socks to make the socks water resistant. And the business itself was doing very well, especially like when you're 21, 22 years old.
Yeah.
And I was working to get a patent, applied for a patent. We're selling now direct to consumer online, and it was going very well. And my goal wasn't to build a sock company, but my goal was to show proof of concept by selling these socks online. That way then I can go to the big brands and say, hey, look, people love these socks. You got to use this technology. Problem was the patent didn't get approved. And so now I was kind of at a crossroads. But I also, and I just did a lot of random things, but I also started making videos and talking on the internet because I got screwed over. I got scammed when I was starting the sock company. And I was so frustrated because I had been scammed or screwed over in so many different instances. Like when I first started the event planning company, the first party that I did, we got screwed over by the club owner. When I started another e-commerce company selling on Amazon, and we got into a lot of trouble there because I didn't know what we were doing. We got the supplier that we were working with essentially just completely screwed us over. And then I did the sock company. I got approached by a fake marketing company. They said that we're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to help you promote your product. We're going to get you all these sales. I gave them the a big chunk of a marketing budget and they ran away. They like just took the money and I never heard from them again. And I was so frustrated now because I was like, I don't have a lot of guidance on this entrepreneurship space. I didn't have a lot of support. I didn't have people telling me what to do. I didn't have like that sort of like support. And so I don't know anyone to talk to. So I just started making like content on the internet about like how to launch a business without getting screwed over. I didn't really think anything of it. I took it, I did it off my cell phone and I just started making videos in front of a white wall, just kind of as a hobby. And when people said that, they're like, why would you do that as a hobby? Like, there's no way that's true. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, it was like, I think I had around 10,000 subscribers. And this is before YouTube had any sort of monetization requirements. Yeah. You could monetize any piece of content with anything. And my buddy, in business terms, you'd call him your business partner. And in regular terms, you call him your best friend. Yeah. Came over and he was like, hey man, like, how much money are you making on YouTube? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not making any money. He's like, from your ads. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, let me look at it. So he goes into the back end of my YouTube. He's like, dude, you never even turned on the monetization on your channel. I was like, I didn't even know you could do that. He clicks one button and now start making a little bit of money from YouTube. But that was how it started. And when my patent got denied, I was at right around 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And so I was kind of at this like crossroads.
Was it the same channel?
The Minority Mindset channel.
So is that how you launched it?
That's how I launched it. It was just like my videos in front of a white wall.
What was the thought process behind the name? It's a cool name.
So the thought process was, if you want to do anything big or different, you can't do what everybody else does.
Yep.
And you have to think differently. It has nothing to do with the way you look or your ethnicity or your skin color. It's that mindset. And so I think back to like when I was throwing these parties, everybody was going to the parties. I started hosting the parties. Then like I had some money saved up now. People, when I was in college, I knew people in Ann Arbor who had way more money than I did, like way more money. None of them were investing in real estate. Even though I told them about it, they were like, no, that's too risky. Why would you want to invest in real estate? People are losing their shirts in real estate. I did something different and I started investing in real estate. So for me, it was that mindset of thinking differently. And then if you want to start a business, if you want to succeed and do something completely different, you have to think differently. So that was the whole history behind the name Minority Mindset, not really kind of thinking that it would go anywhere, but somehow by, I was very fortunate and I put a lot of work into it. And then, I was able to see the channel grow to 100,000 subscribers, which was like unbelievable. Like how in the world, like I remember when I started the channel, I was like, I think big, but I thought so small about myself when it came to YouTube. I was like, there's no way that 100,000 people would want to watch this type of education voluntarily.
So let me ask you a question. 100,000, right? And sounds to me like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you started the channel just because you had things you wanted to say, experiences you had. And it doesn't sound to me like you even had enough knowledge to even do this, but it doesn't sound to me like you were keyword researching, that you were like hacking videos and other people's videos to see like what would get views. You genuinely just showed up and said, here's what I want to talk about today because I think it's important to me, so I'll share it. And what ended up happening was because it was important to you, it ended up being important to other people. But it doesn't seem like, because a lot of people there's a lot of stuff out there about building YouTube channels and I'll be honest with you. So when I'm doing the long form, I think I've been a little too self-involved in like trying to see what's working, this and that. The shorts, I genuinely just talk. Like my shorts are random. I mean, I got shorts about how I spent 25 grand on my toilets, and like the thought process about, there's some of my more viral ones, but there's like, okay, why did I spend that much money on toilets? And I have found that to be interesting in the sense of maybe the key is that there is no key and it's just like showing up. Like, was that how you approached it? Like when you first started?
Yeah. I never really looked into like, the reason why I know that now is because I've gotten a lot of those questions. What are the best keywords? What are the best thumbnails or description? And I never cared about any of that. Like I didn't even, a little bit more, okay. But my number one focus is the content. Like keywords, I don't even know what keywords we use. Like in terms of like the tags or whatever, I don't know what we use. Titles are important, but it's like the 80-20 rule. 80% is I would even say the 90-10. Like 90% is the bulk of the content. If you have a crappy title but good content, the video will go much further than if you have a good title but crappy content. Yeah. So for me, the number one focus is the value that I put in the video. And everything else is just kind of secondary, and that's kind of the icing on the cake. And so when I was starting, my number one focus was just like, what do I wish somebody would have told me? And what was interesting was I made a video. I released it on, I forget when it was, but I think it was 2016. I released this video. It went nowhere. And what I used to do back then was, because I used to get like very few views, I used to hit the refresh button 100 times. Each video had 100 views. So I used to do that. And then I released this video, I think it was 2016, probably got like 120 views. 100 of them are me. A year and some change goes by, and I'm putting out videos multiple times a week, every week. Like I haven't missed a single video date. And a year and so, I think it was a year and a half later, 18 months. And that video that I released 18 months ago started to go viral. And that was the video 18 months after that video went out. And that was the video that took my channel from like, it took me 18 months of solid work to get from 0 to 30,000 subscribers. Then it took me 60 days to go from 30,000 to 100,000 subscribers. And it was all because of a video that I released 18 months prior. So it's the YouTube gods are watching what you're doing, and they're looking at the effort you put in.
I've always said this. I feel like social media, just so for a minute, forget about YouTube or whatever. I feel like social media is like dating, right? It's like you can take out a girl on a most epic first date. I mean, you can plan every minute of it, and it's just the epic environment, helicopters and flowers, and at the end of that date, you get down on one knee and you're like, "Will you marry me?" And she's gonna be like, "What the, dude? It's one date, it's one video." Like, and I feel like that's how people treat a lot of organic mechanisms, like YouTube. It's like, I made this amazing video, I put my heart and soul into it. Like, will you marry me? Like, will you send me all your viewership now? And it's like, I need you to show up consistently, and I need to know who you really are, and that you're going to give to this relationship as much as I would give to it. And I've always, and people find that, people laugh at it, but it's like, that's actually how I've seen, most recent example. So one of my best friends does a lot of Twitter. So I'm like, and I will say Elon buying Twitter got my attention. So I'm like, what's this Twitter? I don't tweet at all. Like I kind of started looking around. And I was like, oh, I get it. I see what Twitter's for. Like, you got to find your circle. Like, you got to find, like, that community, right? So as you and I talked about, like, the newsletter community, I'm really into, like, building a media company, into the newsletter. So I found that market. So I have 13,000 followers on Twitter, and I make a post. And I'm not even joking. So thank God Elon added the how many people see your post. So that's a public number. I put my first post, I got 89 people to see it. I'm like, this is embarrassing. I'm like, I'm over here on YouTube posting shorts, getting 50 to 100,000 views. And I'm over here on Twitter getting 89. I can't do this. Right? But then in my head, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, do I want this to be, because how did I get the 13,000 followers? It's over years of just randomness. Like, they're not committed. I've not been nurturing the platform or them. And so it's only been about 3 weeks, and I've been consistent every day posting multiple tweets and just, and now my average tweet's getting 300-400 views. And I mean, is it earth-shattering? No, but that's 5-6x the results by just consistency for a few weeks. Imagine if I can do that for like 3-4 months or for a year. So one question I have for you is, most people just don't have the discipline. 0 to 30,000, you said it took 18 months, right? And just one more I'll give to everybody. By the way, I want to backtrack because there's so many parts of our story that overlap. I don't think we've ever had a chance to discuss because it's hilarious as you're telling your story. I'm laughing. But TikTok. So I started TikTok it was almost a year ago. It took me 11 months to get from 0 to 100,000 followers. It was painful, right? While I'm watching others just skyrocketing, it took me 2 weeks to go from 100 to 150,000. Wow. And it'll take me, probably in another 2 weeks, I'll be at 200,000. So I will have gone from 100 to 200,000 in about 6 to 8 weeks, wow. Maybe even less. And where the first 100,000 took 11 months. Yeah. And so I'm on the other side of it now, seeing like, okay, so you want to do the organic thing, like you got to play the long game and you got to show up consistently, but it is so freaking hard, man. So that first year and a half, what made you said, so how many times were you posting?
I was, in the first year and a half, I think I was posting 3 times a week. I was also going to law school full time, and this was a hobby for me. because I was working on my sock business and I was working on real estate because
Okay, so this is like your fifth thing that
this
you're
is my
doing.
fifth thing. And so, see, I mean, I learned later on the power of focusing, but in the beginning, I didn't understand that. For me, it was like, I'm going to do whatever I can because I had one goal then. Like when I was in law school around that time, even before, I'm going to buy as many properties as possible because real estate is the end game. That was all that I saw. I was like, oh my God, like I can build true wealth with real estate. So I was making money anywhere I could and then trying to buy real estate, and that was it. So YouTube was really just like my hobby. And so 18 months was like 3 videos a week, which took a lot of time.
So did you truly not care? Is what helped you get that 18 months because you just didn't care how many were watching or subscribing because you just enjoyed the process so much?
I really enjoyed talking about it. I enjoyed the outlet. And I don't know what it was that really drew me to it. Like I still kind of think back and I wonder what it was because I never wanted people to know who I was, which is kind of strange. And that was one of the reasons why I did it under the alias Minority Mindset as opposed to Jaspreet Singh. Like it wasn't until 2022 that I changed the logo from MM to my face. And now we're starting to kind of put more of Jaspreet Singh into it as opposed to Minority Mindset because I want a Minority Mindset to be like a place where people can find that community as opposed to a place where you can find Jaspreet Singh. But what I learned, let me tell you another funny thing about that because I always had it with the entrepreneurial mind where I was like, if I'm going to do this and I want to grow it, I don't want to build a brand around me. That's not scalable. That's not sellable. That's nothing. Like if anything, I want to build a network like CNBC. And so I used to try to bring other people onto the Minority Mindset YouTube channel, and it failed every single time. And so I would bring on other people. They would make videos. They're very smart people. And I did this on multiple occasions. And what I learned was that people wanted to watch me. And that was really kind of heartwarming, but also kind of like ground shattering to me where it's like, wait, why the heck do people want to watch me? Like I have over 1 million subscribers and you still want to watch me? Like it's almost like, it feels amazing, but it's also hard to like really believe that. It's like, why? Like that's crazy. Like it's really amazing to feel that. And that's where I was like, okay, now I have to either make a decision. Do I want to continue promoting me or what is it that I want to do? And now I'm kind of realizing the power of a personal brand, and there's a lot of like value in that, which is why now I'm doing more for Jaspreet Singh. But in the beginning, it wasn't that.
Well, look at even this podcast that you're on. It used to be called The Fighting Entrepreneur. Jan of this year, 2023, it changed to Onyx Singhal Show because for me, I was like, you know what? I can build, and I think this was also largely based off of a conversation I had with Grant Cardone a few years ago that opened my eyes because I asked Grant, he started Cardone Capital, and he's become, that's led him to going straight to a billionaire status. He did that in like 3 or 4 years, right? And say that to him and he'll laugh because, well, what about the 20 years, 30 years before that that's set up for that? So my question to him was, hey, you went bananas on social media. You went insane. Like you're everywhere. You were posting, you were podcasting, you were interviewing, you were chopping little, I actually remember I spoke at GrowthCon. One of the things that fascinated me was behind the stage in the back area, there was an entire lineup of people. There was a team, and all they were doing was social media posting. They were live, taking the footage, boom, 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 editing it, posting it. Okay, taking the snippet, posting that. Okay, making an image with a quote that was just said and posting it. It was just bombarding social media, and I remember being fascinated, and I remember thinking, God, I never want to ever be that social. Like, holy crap, like it's Truman Show. Like, it's like, what the hell? So I remember finally I did ask him, because then I saw him do Cardone Capital. I'm like, was this always part of your strategy? Like, did you do all of what you did on social media? And he said, all I know is that if you build a big enough personal brand, you can sell anything. If you build the trust, you build the faith. So he's like, yeah, at some point along the way, raising money became my thing I wanted to do. And I kind of changed my perspective because I used to be limited. I think personal brand means it's just all about you. But now I'm seeing, hey, I can use my personal brand, have that be this big asset, which I retain for life. It doesn't have to be sellable. But using that personal brand, I can build this company, this company, this company, and then each of those can have its own equity value. And so now this becomes something I was hiding and shying away from, to now it becomes like my number one thing that I'm like.
It's like a wheel with spokes with you in the center, and now you can kind of spin off anything that you want.
Exactly.
And that was a big lesson for me. Kind of learning the same thing where I never wanted people to know me. I didn't want that. Yeah. And then you kind of go through the process, and I was like, you know what? Either I have to commit or stop kind of going halfway and figure out what it is that I want to do.
Yeah.
And so that was when Minority Mindset transformed. This was 2022, where I had like all these other products, and then Minority Mindset became Jaspreet Singh. Yeah. And then I spun off Briefs Media, which is my newsletter company, where we have things like Market Briefs, my newsletter for investors, Business Briefs, my newsletter for entrepreneurs, all free newsletters. Started off just as a way now to spin off kind of what you're saying, something outside of me.
So now that we're talking about the value of personal brand, this is interesting, guys. And by the way, that wasn't a plan. I have some amazing things I want to talk to Jaspreet about, but do you mind, because I have a point I want to make, but I don't want to encroach on any data and numbers. Are you public about how many subscribers you have in any of your newsletters? Is that a public number?
Yeah, so we have on our Market Briefs. So if I back up, Market Briefs started off as a hobby. Again, I'll tell you exactly why, because the pandemic hit in 2020.
Yeah.
And I went from making 3 videos a week to now 5 to 7 videos a week.
Wow.
And I was like, I need a way to stay up to date.
So you kept the 3 videos a week all the way from 2016 up to like you were still doing 3 a week.
Until the pandemic.
And your videos, just so everyone knows, your videos are long, man. Some of your videos, I mean, you get meaty. I mean, it's like an hour long.
Some of them were long, yeah.
Like you get into it. It's not like he just goes on for 60 seconds and then goes off. Okay, anyway,
So we went to, I think it was 7. I think I went straight to 7. Because things, I mean, it was crazy. It was a completely crazy time.
Every day there was something new happening.
And I was struggling to keep up. So I told my team, I said, hey, can you give me a daily briefing of what's happening? And they were like, sure. And then I was like, well, why don't we just give this daily briefing for free? I already had like my own personal email newsletter or whatever, but this was completely different because this was like literally, here's what's happening in stocks and whatever. And they said, sure. So now they start sending this to me, and I said, what if we just offer this for free to the audience as well? And again, I didn't know what we were going to do with it. We didn't have a monetization plan. Like we were just going to offer this as a newsletter. Yeah. So we launched it as the Minority Mindset newsletter. Yeah. Super original.
Yeah.
And between 2020 and I think it was March 1st, actually, 2022, we grew to 70,000 subscribers on that Minority Mindset newsletter. And now we just kind of sprinkle it in my videos here and there. So I never spent a penny on advertising. I literally would just like, because we had like other monetization streams. So the newsletter was just like something that I said here and there because I didn't want to spend money on something that's not going to really drive us anything. So now 2022, March 1st, we had, I think it was 74,000 subscribers on March 1st, 2022. And then by the end of 2022, we had just over 200,000 subscribers, because then we switched it from the Minority Mindset newsletter to then Briefs Media, which then held Market Briefs as one of the newsletters. And that's when I decided that we were going to now turn this into a real thing.
And like focus on pushing.
Focus on actually pushing and growing Market Briefs. And so I pushed it pretty hard in 2022, and that's what took us from 74,000 to just over 200,000 by the end of 2022. Now here we are in early April 2023. We're at 200 and I don't remember the exact number today because we clean up our list very often.
Yeah, you're gonna get rid of all the unknown.
But we're over 200,000 subscribers.
So I want to make a point here on the value of personal brand. So if you have 200,000, let's just say 200,000 active subscribers, this is a really important piece of information. That's active. I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing you've probably brought 400,000 through at some point. You probably cleaned up half the list, or 300,000.
We've brought in quite a few. I mean, how many have you cleaned up? At least 300,000.
Yeah, at least, right?
If not 4, yeah.
So the reason I'm saying that, guys, is if we go to Facebook and try to buy 300,000 leads, you're going to spend $1.5 million. You're going to spend $1.5+ million. The quality won't be nearly as high because they're not that vested in you. So when I say what's the value of a personal brand, you basically, with your value and your brand and your channel, replaced easily a minimum of $1.5, if not $2 million worth of media buying to build this company that eventually is going to go on to have a much higher equity value to it because it's going to have all that data, all these amazing people there. And so that was built off this personal brand. So the big aha moment I had that I want to share with everyone who's listening right now is if you're going to get into the personal brand business, you got to be thinking 5-10 years. You cannot be thinking 1-2 year. You literally, so when I rebranded Onyx and Gall Show, right, we started in Jan 1, 2023. My 5-year clock began in 2023, even though I've been doing this for 20 years. I was like, now that this is an actual aggressive focus of mine, right? Okay, great, we're doing well with shorts, but now I'm going to start doing well on other social media platforms. We're launching our newsletters. We're doing things very differently. My content game is different now. So I always say we went from being content behind a paywall to now actually putting a lot of content before the paywall, which is a completely different type of company to build. So my 5-year clock started in 2023 of Jan. And I'm like, now I'm fortunate to have a little bit of a boost because I already had people following me, but I'm also trying to change the type of people now. I mean, my content style is changing. So I just kind of feel like everyone should hear that. And with you too, it sounds almost like the 5-year was like you started in 2016. So today in 2023, we're sitting 7, I don't know, I can't do math, man.
Right, just over 7 years.
7 years, yeah. So, but it was about a few years ago that I feel like even you started really taking off and we're even we connected.
Yeah, and I think for me it was kind of the opposite because I think I liked selling, but I was never good at it. Yeah. And I just couldn't do it. So like I wasn't never like a big course seller or anything like that. We had some classes, but like it was like you had to go out of your way to find that this class was for sale. Yeah. And so it was just not something that I could do. And so I needed something that could be different. That's why I went down the free newsletter route where I was like, how can I monetize something in a way that really aligns with something that I want to do in a way that really amplifies the brand. Yeah. So that was when the newsletter brand really became the opportunity with then monetization originally from sponsorships, but then creating a platform, which we call now Market Insiders, which is an education platform where you can learn now a bunch of things: stock market investing, real estate investing, money management, building wealth, in addition to getting like a whole bunch of other value that we can then also, it's separate from Briefs Media, but they're like sister companies that feed one another. Yeah. And so that's been working very well now as a way to kind of help accelerate the growth for both companies.
It's awesome stuff. I mean, and I think the big key message here for everyone who's listening is that no matter what you're doing in your life, it might not be trying to become a big social media, or build a big personal brand, but I think, I've been doing business now for 20 years. So personally for me, if someone said, Anik, what is like your biggest takeaway? I have so many, but one that really humbled me and one that was like, gosh, it's a hard one for people to accept, especially young, aggressive type A entrepreneur types or young, aggressive type A anything, patience.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? I gave this advice to one of our mastermind members of BO, Board of Expert Masterminds recently, where I said, they're trying to scale and they're doing a lot of things. And I ended up saying these words came out of my mouth, and I felt it was like one of those moments of wisdom where I was like, if you want to scale, you need to slow down. And they looked at me and they're like, what the hell did you just say? I'm like, whoa, what did I just say? I'm like, but no, I believe that. I'm like, you just need to be patient. You got to let things play out.
It's also like, I think giving it time to think and marinate. So the right before we changed from Minority Mindset to Briefs Media, kind of separated. So that happened in 2022. This is now the end of 2021. I went on this, what I call it, a thinking trip. I went to Florida, and I was all alone for like 3 or 4 days, where I was like, I did this on purpose, where I wanted to be kind of in isolation. I went to this little room. All I had was a bike. I tried to stay away from as much technology as possible. I had my notepad, some books.
When did you do this?
This was in the end of 2021.
Okay, were you married by now?
I was not married then.
Okay,
I was married. Was I married? Maybe it was 20. I was married.
Note to self: do not let his wife watch this episode.
I got married in 2021, so I was married.
The reason I'm asking that is because I'm like, how do you convince your wife to let you do this solo
So she
trip?
went too, but she kind of did her own thing.
Okay, all right, okay, got it.
And I'm sorry, my dates are getting all confused. I was married during this time, But
the point is, you took a trip where you literally said that this is about thinking.
This thinking,
and it's about thinking. Okay.
And so it was really fun because I used to ride my bike to the beach, which wasn't that far, and all I had was my notebook, and I would just sit there, no really agenda, and I would just write my thoughts, and I would just sit on the beach. Now, what would my thoughts be? There would be things about life. It'd be things about business. It'd be things about family. It'd be things about my future. It would just be like random ideas that came into my brain.
Yeah, it's a brain dump completely.
It's
no,
everything.
no intent or like goal to get of which. It's just
Exactly.
like just write it down.
Because I live a very fast-paced life, which I think is one of those, like, I needed something different because I'm always like, in 5 minutes I got this, in 8 minutes I got this, in 15 minutes. So I was like, I didn't have a deadline. So I just sat there and thought. And then I started, when I would go into my business thinking, I was like, what is minority mindset? And I was like, Jaspreet Singh, ? Business, ? And that was where I was like, I don't know. And so I really just started dumping all my thoughts here. And that was where I started separating, I can be something different. The business can be something different. And that was when the idea for Briefs Media all really came out. And so then when I came back, now this is like early part of 2022, we came back after the new year. I had the whole team come together in the office. And I was like, we're changing everything. And so they were like, what happened in the last week? Like, did we miss? And so, but it was really exciting. And it took some time to really kind of make that transition and make it work. But now I'm really starting to see the value of that. Like what you were saying, slow down a little bit. Think about what you're doing. Is there a better way to do it? Let it marinate and kind of just take a little break. And I found that to be very valuable in that moment.
Listen, I did something. God, man, there's so many parts of there's just so much overlap. Just breathe. Like I'm forgetting a lot of it now because we keep moving forward. But this one, so my life coach, I had one. So pandemic hits, business took off. If you are in the business of selling information on the internet, it just exploded, right? Like, I mean, you are in a way, right? Because you're doing it on the front end, but you said, hey, when pandemic hit, my YouTube, like,
Yeah.
And I was burning out, man. I was exhausted. And I really, like, we were growing so fast. The team was growing, and it was just a lot going on. And the advice at that time that my life coach gave to me and made me commit to, which was the craziest thing. I thought she was insane. I'm like, I'm not doing it, but I finally did it. She said, take a month off. So are you out of your mind? Like, if I take a month off, everything's going to fall apart. She goes, great, let's let it fall apart. She's like, either you're right or you're wrong. In both cases, you win. I'm like, I don't know what you define winning as, but my entire business falling apart is not winning to me. She's like, well, how much longer can you keep it going the way you're going with your health and with everything that's going on? I said, my wife and I at that time were starting to get real serious about having a kid and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't, So she's like, if it's going to fall apart, let's rip that Band-Aid. Let's let it fall apart. Let's figure out where the weak spots are. Take a month off. So we planned it. I was like, all right. So I announced it. I think it was September or October. I can't remember which month of 2020. And I just disappeared for a month. So here's what I told the team. I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm at my house. I'm taking a staycation. Can't go anywhere at that time. And I'm like, unless the house is on fire, don't call me. Like, I'm off. I'm not coming in. I'm not shooting videos. I'm not answering questions. I'm not checking Slack. And during that month, I literally did nothing. I would go drive my car around, or I went to the shooting range and learned how to shoot a gun, because I was just like, all right, cool, something fun to do, something new to try. I just did a lot of weird stuff, and sure enough, by the time I came back, about 4 or 5 key people on my marketing team quit. The business did not fall apart. It did not fall apart, but it was under distress. And what I found out was there were so many parts of my business in my life that I was literally carrying on my back. And I was pulling and pulling and pushing and pulling. And when I just ceased to exist, those things, the rubber band had to go back into its original shape. Yeah. And I could really see what I was working with. And we recalibrated the team. We changed how we hired. During that month, I had a lot of epiphanies of where I wanted to take the business, what I wanted to do. And you're right. It was when you sit down to actively be like, so how am I going to solve this problem? It's like the freaking brain doesn't actually work with you. But when I was like, here I am, pointing a gun at a target, I'm about to pull the trigger, and I'm like, oh my God, that's how I solve that problem. And it's like, a lot of people talk about this, and those who have not experienced it will be like, this sounds like a bunch of hocus pocus baloney. It's actually really true. It's like when you give your mind freedom, it accesses different portals and finds solutions.
Yeah, just giving yourself that ability to think as opposed to just doing. And I think we all know that, but giving yourself that, because what you're saying is, how am I supposed to step away for a month? Yeah. And I feel the same way. How am I not supposed to be there for 5 days?
5 days, yeah, even 5 days.
What am I, are you serious? I have this to do, I got that to do, I got that to do. And sometimes you just got to do it and, plan it ahead, let everybody know, and then see what comes out of it.
So when you walked in today, you met an entrepreneur that's here visiting the Learn Center. So I'm working on a project with him. Now, he's a very successful entrepreneur. He's done a couple $100 million in sales over his career. He's sold companies, and I've done similar numbers. I've done some amazing things, and we have a project we're working on together. The project's supposed to launch next month. It's supposed to launch in 5 weeks. And it's just not, it's a push, it's a pull. It's not got any flow. We're not going downstream whatsoever. We're going upstream. We've got all kinds of challenges against us. The old Onic, the Onic from the old Onic, like the 2 years ago Onic, like, right? Like literally like the guy, like 24
Onic
months
1.0.
ago. By then he's already Onic 6.0, right? Like, but still 2 years ago, it's a go, whatever, stop it. We're not changing the goals. We're not changing the dates. We're going to make it happen. We're going to fight extra hard. We're going to work extra hard, extra long hours. And so he flew in because we were going to do a bunch of talks. We were going to do a bunch of work over the next 2 days with the intention of fixing and getting the momentum to meet the original timeline and launch this project. We're in a meeting literally half an hour before you come in the door, right? And about 15 minutes into the meeting, both he and I look at each other and we're like, hey, let's cancel it. Cancel what we're doing next month. Let's just push it back. And I was like, all right, but how much? He's like, whatever it takes. And I'm literally in my own head looking at this conversation and I'm like, holy shit, this is maturity. Like, this is two entrepreneurs who are very successful, who have scaled businesses, that have come to learn one thing. We're not quitting, but it's okay. In the grand scheme of our entire lives, a 3-month pushback on a project to give us sigh of relief, give us time to marinate. So now, all of a sudden, this next 2 days he's here with us isn't about let's film the ads, let's get this out, it's actually about us connecting, talking, and saying, hey, what didn't work, what is working, how do we do this correctly, what's the plan? Let's sit down and really think, give ourselves a room to think about this. And what I've come to figure out is, man, we don't do that in our earlier years. And I know so many entrepreneurs, or so many people, forget entrepreneurs, if you're at work trying to get the next promotion, you're trying to get your medical school degree or your law degree, although I think most people right now that are trying to get their medical degree, if they listen to this podcast, they've quit medical school because I talk about that all the time. But it's whatever you're trying to do, just like take a deep breath, just slow down a little bit, and believe it or not, you'll speed up.
Yeah, and it happens in weird ways, because I'll tell you a story. The first time we did like a team trip together, I was a keynote speaker in Austin, and I decided to bring the whole team out there. And I was like, everyone's been working for a while. Let's give them kind of like a nice retreat out. So it was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days out in Austin, and, got all flights there, hotels and free food and everything. It was just like a good time with everyone. And what was interesting, because my wife was there too and the spouses were there, she was like, this is at a point where I was not with the team. I was busy doing some other stuff. She was like, I saw the craziest and weirdest thing ever. I was like, what? She's like, everybody was in the hot tub talking about work, coming up with ideas for work. And I was like, really? She was like, I've never seen that before, because most people think of work as something you don't want to do. But then when you give like an opportunity like here for the team to now just have fun and give them that like ability to bond with each other, everyone now starts to, because like when you're in an entrepreneurial company, like, everybody's got to be very devoted as it is. But then when you give them that kind of like that same space, all of a sudden people just start talking about ideas in a non-formal way. And you never know what's going to come out of that. And now you're having fun in the hot tub talking business.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Giving that space to, for me, it's been one of my biggest things, and it's really hard to do even right now. But like this morning, that conversation was so I literally, the minute it happened, felt like 1,000-pound dumbbell was lifted off my chest. And even coming into this interview, I was like I could just, I don't have this, because in the end, that proverbial gun that was on my head, I'm holding it. Yeah. It's like, if you have a gun to your head and it feels like you're the one holding it, just take it off. Just put it down. And it's such a, it's a crazy concept, but for pretty much most things that we do now, the way we're running it is so funny, because I'll talk to my team members and, there's a project I really want to get on Monday, but that means they're going to have to work over the weekend. And I just turn over to them like, it ain't worth it, dude. We'll do it on Wednesday. It's just now there are a few times where it's like, hey, we really need to, there's a reason, let's do it. But 9 times out of 10, I have found the things that I applied urgency to don't actually need it. It actually, what it really needed was just take a step back and think about it. All right, I want to change our line of, we talked a lot about professional business career. I've also seen on your channel you've interviewed a lot of really cool people, and I'm curious, who's probably been the most interesting interview or most, the one you learned the most from, the one that was the most interesting? They're always going to be different ones, but tell me a little bit about some of the ones that stick out.
So I think the one that I was the most nervous for was Robert Kiyosaki. And I'll tell you why. Because...
Well, I've done a lot of work with him.
I know you have.
Yeah, so I know. But yeah.
Well, I was the most nervous because he had probably the biggest impact on my life. I read his book. That was the first time I ever voluntarily read a book cover to cover. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Like, I hated reading. I couldn't even read.
Can I tell you a funny story? Yeah. I used to skip school in high school. Like junior year, I started skipping school. I would skip certain grades, certain periods and go. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad while I was skipping class. I used to go to the library. I used to go to Barnes and Nobles. Or back then, Borders. Borders was a bookstore. I used to go to Borders and read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It took me a week to read it, but I would read it like an hour or two a day while skipping school. So that was the first book I ever voluntarily read, and I skipped school to go read it. It was funny.
Yeah, well, I never skipped school to read. I was too scared to do that. But I started reading on a flight to India because I was and this is before you had the individual TVs on the seats, right? So you'd be very bored. So I started reading, and I was like, holy moly, what is this money thing? So that book really was like my inspiration into this whole new world of financial education, which I was never exposed to before. So I was very nervous to meet him because of that big impact that he had. And, he has a very interesting personality, very strong opinions. So it was cool to meet him.
Did you ever get anyone to kind of pre-warm you up?
No, I had no idea.
All right. So I've become very good friends with a lot of the leadership and a lot of the people at the company. I met Robert Kiyosaki for the first time in Vegas. Okay, so we were he wrote the foreword to my first book, and so I wanted to get a little interview with him to see if they could support my book, and so he was in Vegas. I don't remember fully. I think he was there for a gun and hunting convention because he's a very big enthusiast, and he just So we're gonna meet in a hotel. It was a suite. We're gonna meet there. We're gonna film real quick, and as I enter the hotel, I'm already like this, man. At this point, I've already met Shah Rukh Khan. I have hung out with Shah Rukh. I've hung out with some of the biggest stars in the world, but they didn't impact me the way he did, right? And so I'm meeting a childhood hero, and I'm in the elevator going up, and one of his team members, I don't remember, they turn around, they're like, don't say too much, keep kind of head down, we'll tell you what to do, when to do, da-da-da. He's not in a great mood today. And I was like, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, you don't know or you've not been briefed? I'm like, no. And they're like, that's all right, it's too late now, let's go in the interview. I'm like, what? And they're like, oh, by the way, he's here for a gun and hunting convention. And I'm like, did he leave the guns at home? Because I don't think I'm in the interview with them. It went on to become one of the most influential partnerships and friendships I've had in my business. I mean, but as you say, I'll tell you this thing about Robert. So he has really strong opinions, which a lot of people disagree with or whatever. But he actually lives them. So he's not one of those people out there feeding stuff to the market. But he actually he invests the way he says. He does things with his own money the way he says. So I respected that about him. Anyone else that stick out other than Robert?
I think I learned a lot from every interview that I've done.
Have you ever interviewed Dave Ramsey?
I haven't connected with Dave Ramsey. I love Dave too, and it's funny because anytime I recommend books, I always say you have to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. You have to read Total Money Makeover.
So what's your perspective on that? Because a lot of people that are into investing, like Rich Dad Poor Dad followers, will not like Dave Ramsey. Because I listen to Dave Ramsey stuff sometimes. I'm like, no debt, no this. I have debt and I do well with it.
You know what? I mean, there's a time and place for both, and I think what I always say when it comes to education especially is you have to listen to different points of view. That way you can find your own lens. Never blindly follow anybody. I always say on my channel, almost in every video, never blindly follow a random guy on YouTube. Never blindly listen to a random guy on YouTube. Don't take what I say and copy it. Take what I say and learn from it and apply it. And so when you talk about Dave and Robert, who have both helped millions of people in different financial ways, learn from both of them. And I learned a lot from Dave. I think I applied more of Dave's knowledge early on. I refused to get a credit card for a long time. I used to only keep cash. And then I got that cash stolen from me a few times. I used to go to the gym all the time, and then I go to the gym and I found out all the cash was taken out of my wallet because I didn't have like those. It was like one of those like more like kind of rundown gyms where you didn't have locks on the lockers or whatever. People took the cash out of my wallet. That happened a couple of times, and then I got the cash stolen on my wallet a third time. And then I had an issue with a debit card where I purchased a transaction where I never got the product, but the debit card wouldn't like give me the fraud protection. Which then led me finally to like breaking the straw that broke the camel's back. And then I got credit cards, and I was like, whoa, credit cards, I got cash back. This is cool. But because I was always a disciplined spender. Like I knew I was never going to spend money on something that I can't afford. So it's like you start to learn and kind of see what's better for you.
Here's another area where officially, finally on video say this. All right, so I've been on I was not a Ramsey fan at all. By the way, a little interview tip. Don't say the 2 words Dave Ramsey ever in front of Robert Kiyosaki. Do not. Do not. I made the mistake. Do not. It's like he and I get it, like very different ways and different schools of thoughts. I was very anti-Dave Ramsey and his school of thought for a long time until I will honestly tell you, probably within the last 6 months, I finally said, all right. I think one of the things that turned me off was not only the way what he was thinking. I don't align with that thought process now. You addressed it perfectly. Now that I have all these resources and abilities and understanding and knowledge and network and all of that, right? But I think something that always used to turn me off also about him was how confidently he projects what he says that I so strongly disagree with. And that would be like, no. So in the last 6 months, I finally was like, you know what? Hold on. I have been sitting here. I've never watched his content. I kind of read one of his books. So I actually started watching some of his content. And I came out of it and I was like, I hate to say this, but for someone who's just starting, you got to follow this stuff. Like, you got to follow the thing. Now, once you have the money and you have the success and all, like, I can see how you could pivot a little bit away. You could take, what you said, learn from a few of the people and create your own strategy. But that's interesting. Any other ones? Any other really powerful interviews or people you've met?
So
not even interviews, people you've met maybe in your career.
I've met some. So I always like to like what I just said, try to talk to people with differing points of view. So like in the cryptocurrency space, I met with Michael Saylor, who's huge on Bitcoin. Like he's like, Bitcoin's going to take over the world. And then I've also interviewed a guy named Peter Schiff, who is the complete opposite. Bitcoin's going to zero. Gold is going to take over the world. Oh, cool.
You've interviewed Peter Schiff?
Yeah, I've interviewed Peter Schiff. So again, two dynamically polar extremes, very strong opinions. And I really enjoy that. And because I like learning from people that have differing points of view, because what I've learned is when you go down that rabbit hole of believing that only one thing is right, and social media makes it very easy that like everything else is stupid, you become stupid. And that's where you need, like for me, I try to always like listen to differing points of view, even if I don't agree with it, because I want to learn. And my goal here is just to learn. And that's what I love doing. So I really enjoyed that. I think I was really excited. I was super excited when I got to meet Kevin O'Leary. I did an interview with him. Okay. That was like, I loved Shark Tank.
Mr. Wonderful.
Like that was like such a cool experience. So, it's like things that like.
Have you had a chance to meet Damon yet?
No, I haven't.
No, really cool guy. Like just one of the most down to earth. So I've done a lot of things with him. I've interviewed him, met with him. He's been here many times. And, it's so crazy to watch how some of these guys that are TV personalities, like even myself, right? I met someone recently at a mall. And I'm telling you, I was in line for a coffee and they kept, when someone recognizes you, they're doing like that double, triple take. And you can see and you're like, here we go. By the way, I just share this all the time. And I don't know if you agree or not. I'm super introverted. So like if you run into me in a public place and you're like, are you on it? I'm going to get really awkward really fast. All right. Like I feel like I got caught with like, candy bar, like my hand in the candy jar or something. So this person's doing this and they turn around and they're like, are you and then it's always, are you the TikToker or the YouTuber? Yeah. I take a lot of pride when someone says, are you the TikToker? Cause I'm like,
I've never gotten that one. Actually, one time. Yeah.
So she said, are you the guy from YouTube? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, you're the guy that's always talking about email marketing and entrepreneurship. I'm like, yeah. She got super excited. She's talking to me. I was like in line for coffee and kind of in my own mindset. And I'm just like talking to her. And this is what she says. And I laughed. I'm like, well, she just kind of stops and she goes, wow, you're like different. Right? You're different. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, she literally goes, you're kind of low energy in person. I was like, ouch, like, dang. But I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, when the camera turns on, I'm a bit different. But and I don't carry this level of conversation in my, like, during the normal day. I'm like, just, you know, kind of down to earth. And I don't like I'm a homebody. Like, for the first few months, pandemic, I was like, yes. Like, my wife can't force me to see humans. Like, I can't go out. It could be like deadly to us, right? Yeah. But then obviously even after a while, that drove me nuts. So would you say you're kind of like
I'm introverted,
video personality, but then like you're more quiet?
It's funny.
Do you run into people that like recognize you?
You know, it's crazy. I do, and it's always like a big like, oh my god, you recognize me? Like, that's crazy. It's like, it's always still a shock to me.
Even me till this day, I'm like, you recognize me? Okay, and then I get scared.
Yeah, it's wild. And you know what's funny? I'm a really goofy person. Like, I'm really silly, but I'm very introverted. Like, I feel like I struggle talking to people. I suck at small talk. I suck at networking. I hate the traditional idea of networking, which is like one thing me and my wife always disagreed about. But I'll talk about that in a second. But I'm always just really goofy and silly. And I'm just like a kind of like, I call myself weird, which is like in an interview when you come to work with us. In the first round of interview, one of the questions we ask is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how weird are you? And so it's just, we kind of gauge that. So I'm like, I just do silly things. I'll be dancing sometimes just like with my wife. And like, I'm always kind of like embarrassing her. And those are always when people come up to me and say, hey, are you that guy? And I'm like, yeah, you know, and so my wife is always like, you need to calm down.
Do you share any of that in your public person? Because I wouldn't have picked up on that. Even like when we just met face to face for the first time, but in our first half an hour before this podcast, I wouldn't have picked up on that you're goofy or anything.
You know,
like that.
I think it's like,
does it take time to
think
warm
so.
up?
I think it just depends on who I'm around. Like when I'm with my friends, like I'm always just like, you know, around the right people, I'm loud and obnoxious. Around everywhere else, I'm just quiet.
I'm 100% the same way. So where I was going with that was Damon John. The first time he came to visit here, I couldn't get him to smile. He was so serious. He was great to work with. He was one of the best I've ever worked with because he like really, really takes instruction well. Whereas a lot of celebrity people, you'd be like, hey, say this. They're like, no, you know? And I'm not going to mention names, but there's a few I've worked with that are like, refuse. He's just like, all right, just whatever. And so like halfway through our time here, the president of his company was here too with him. And I had gotten to know his president pretty well. And so I kind of pull him aside. I'm like, hey, man, I don't think he likes me. Like, am I doing something wrong? Like, I really, 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 really respect Damon. And actually, Damon wrote the foreword to my second big book, Escape. And I'm like, I actually really, really love Damon. Like, what am I doing wrong here? And his president starts laughing. He's like, nothing, man. He's super introverted. I'm like, what the? He's on TV. He can't be. Isn't that like, you can't be introverted on TV? He's like, no. He's going to take a few times. When you get to know him a little bit, you know, he's going to. And it truly was like it took a few meetings and got to the point where we were like texting each other jokes, right? Like during the pandemic, he texted me some like stock tip or something. I didn't do it, and it made a lot of money. And then he asked me a week later, "Did you do it?" I'm like, "No," and he's like, "Haha." Like, you know, it's like a very different personality, and I'm like, the more you meet some of these celebrities, it could be very different. Like I've met Bob Proctor was exactly the way he came. Like I loved him. I miss him every day. Like, he was one of the most influential. Like he was probably one of the most influential people in my life that in person that I had a relationship with. Les Brown. On TV, on screen, in person. That man, like when you meet him, like even like I always joke with Les, and like you'll walk in and he'll be like, "This is Les Brown," you know. Maybe I'm like, dude, it's just me. Like, why are you announcing yourself? But he's awesome. But some people are very, very different. So you were saying you have a different perspective on networking.
Yeah, networking. So I actually me and my wife were talking about this. I think a night or two ago, where I was probably 19 and I went to this like real estate conference. And that's when I realized that I hated networking because it was like you go to this conference and the whole purpose is just like mingle. And I was like, dude, I can't connect with anybody. I hate small talk. And it's just like, it just seemed so fake to me. Like one thing that I know from myself, like I hate sucking up to people. I can't be fake. I just can't. Like if I like you, I like you. If I don't, I can't. You know, it's just how I am. And so like me trying to be there, being fake, talking to you, smiling, giving business cards, accepting business cards. I'm like, I know this is going nowhere. And so
I'm never going to talk to you again as it is.
I don't even know like what. And so I never enjoyed that. And I was like, why would I want to put myself in a position to just be fake? And my wife was like, no, you need to get out there, meet people. And I was like, no, that's not me. And I was like, I'm going to just focus on building me. And then it was funny because I talked to her about this like literally like 2 days ago. And I was like, yeah, I think networking is not for me. I like building my own value because then I can reach out to who I want. And if I'm valuable enough, they'll want to respond to me. And it's a completely different way of looking at things. And I think for me, that's the way to do it. Like I can't go and just talk to random people and make a connection. Like that's like once in a blue moon type of thing.
Just I can't either. Never done it in my life. Yeah. And so people think I'm this big schmoozer because I've networked with and done business with so many of these celebrities and all. I can't. Okay, if I walk into a genuinely new room where I don't know anybody, I'm not that guy that's just going to start going around. Like, I can play the role. It's very uncomfortable. I don't enjoy it. So most likely, chances are, I'll never even step into the room.
Yeah.
Like, I just won't. I'm the guy that just won't go.
Yeah,
right?
I'm the same way.
Now, if you want to track back, people are like, well, how'd you partner with Robert? I'm sure. And I'm like, you know how that happened. There was a launch going on in our industry. Somehow, Rich Dad shows up on the leaderboard. And being as competitive as we can be just as entrepreneurs and being like, that's how did my mentor, how the person who I've looked up to. And so I was like, I want to kick his ass. You know, it was just like, it was one of those like, I want to kick his ass because this is my home. This is my turf. You know, I know you're this big guy, but this is my turf. So we competed with their team like crazy. And in the end, we finally beat them. Like literally came down, and ironically enough, I'm at a Russell Peters concert or like in DC. It's the last day. The whole time I'm just texting my team like, okay, now send this email and I send this text out, and we beat him at the end. And the way we became friends with his team was, so the next day, I'm like, all right, how do we? Like, should I reach out to the main person, ask them to introduce me to them? How do I strategize meeting them because this is cool? And in the meantime, my director of marketing that night after we beat them, it gets announced at 12 or 1 a.m. He's in Australia, so for him it's daytime. He literally he got their email address somehow, like the two heads of the company. He sent them an email that subject line said, nanny, nanny, boo, boo. That was what he sent. And when I found out the next morning, I was, are you insane? How could you do that? What the hell is wrong with you? Blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? They replied because they thought it was hilarious. Oh, wow. And then they were like, let's get on a call. Because I started yelling at him, and he's like, are you done yet? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you free today at 2 o'clock? I'm like, why? He's like, because you have a call with them. I'm like, son of a, you know? And so next thing I knew, 2 weeks out, they invited me to come visit. I flew out, met with them. That wasn't some strategic, shake hands at. Bob Proctor I became really good friends with because I met his son at an event because I sat down to eat, and I was eating with the only other person at the event I knew, Sonia. And Sonia was like, hey, Anik, this is Brian Proctor. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, ha, any relation to Bob? And he's like, yeah, it's my dad. I'm like, oh, shit. After which, by the way, I never asked him for anything. He was a really nice guy, so we became friends. Started hanging out at the event, and next thing I know, 2 weeks later, he calls me and says, you want to meet my dad? I'm like, I'd freaking love to. So it's not been this like strategic. It's honestly been genuine. Just show up, right? Just be who you are. And but I mean, I do think the people I know in my life have been important. Like even you showing up here, I don't think this is an active networking. We've been chatting back and forth for a year, saying like, hey, let's get you on the podcast or whatever. And you're like, I'm in the area, like.
Yeah, I think I texted you on Saturday. I was like, hey, I'm here for the wedding. Are you available on Monday? Because I'm heading back on Monday, so.
No, and so people would be like, oh, this is strategic networking. It really isn't. We just, respect one another, followed one another for a while, and just said, hey, are you around?
And I think it all just started, for me, it's always just provide value. Because I was like in one of your programs, and you were talking about how you were trying to get on YouTube.
Yes.
And I just sent you an email. Not really know what to expect, to say, hey man, I have this YouTube channel. I would love to just provide whatever value I can. If you want to hop on a call, nothing. I don't have any service to sell you. Just wanted to provide some value, and you were like, sure. And we became friends, and that's how I met a lot of people.
So I probably played it a little cooler because I knew of you and I knew your channel already. So when you reached out, when you reached out, I was like, holy shit! Like, it's. So let me tell you. So this gives us a pivot. I'm gonna ask you some. We're gonna get a little deep now. We're gonna get into a little personal, but not like personal. So here's an interesting story. So one of my who I consider like my little brother, and so he went through a rough patch in his life. He's one of, if not the smartest people I know. All right, the guy can do everything and anything. He's brilliant, and so he lives in India, and so he was going through a rough patch. So he actually came here to the U.S. and stayed in one of we have a condo that we weren't using, and him and his wife came and they stayed there, and he would work with me every day, come to office with me. He was just trying to get like his reset, right? Like, so he wanted to be around me a little bit more. And a couple of months he actually lived in my house with me. And in that and like that time he was telling me like, he was like, I want to be able to be online and have a following like you do, and I want to be able to make videos and stuff like that, but I have an accent and no one's going to ever follow me. And I just looked at him and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, right? And it just didn't make sense to me. He's like, yeah. He's like, well, you've got, you're basically, you basically look white. Like, I mean, you speak like that. You have this American accent. Like nobody cares, and yada yada yada. And so I'm looking at him. I'm like, you're so wrong. I'm like, there's nothing to do with any of it. And so we're gonna pivot and talk about this because I am so oblivious to racism. I mean, honest to God, I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all. And I'm wondering if it's happened to me, but growing in this area, I think I happen to be in like one specific area that's very cocktail of all these like different, we have every ethnicity, religion here. I went through elementary school, middle school, high school, and like, I didn't really face much. And so as if obviously the recent decade, it's been being highlighted a lot. People ask me and I'm like, I'm sure it's happening. Maybe I'm just like completely like turned it off. Like I'm not focusing on it. So I'm trying to tell him this. I'm like, dude, you need to just focus on good content, good this, like you're brilliant, you're a genius, da, 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 da. And he's using like my look and talk and everything. And I knew your channel. And I pulled up your channel and I showed it to him and I said, this guy, right? He doesn't look like us. He's a Sardarji, he's got his turban and he's got his beard. Look at him. He's succeeding like crazy on YouTube. Why are you sitting here telling me that it's like my look and accent or whatever? And he lives in Chandigarh, right? So like he's like, that meant something to him. And so he eventually ended up pivoting and using it to his advantage because he went after the India market. Now he's killing it. He's like one of the biggest influencers and he's doing great stuff. But I've always wondered and wanted to ask you if I ever got a chance, like, has racism or has been like the fact that you keep your turban and your beard, has that been a challenge in your life as you've grown your business?
In business, no. But I think it's because of the way I was kind of raised. So I experienced a lot of racism growing up. Okay. Yeah. I grew up in an area that was all white. And elementary school was like, so in my house, it was my grandparents lived with us. And my parents and me and my little brother. And so my parents were always working, so I didn't spend much time with them. And so it was my grandparents. My grandfather was like a tough guy, like this guy's like, you don't mess with him ever. And so when I would get picked on and like I would get beat up sometimes, he was like, you need to fight back. Like you have to learn to fight. And my grandmother was like the sweetest, nicest, most caring person ever. She's like, no, you just have to be loving. Just remember God. It's going to be okay. So two completely polar different extremes. I was too timid to fight at the time. So I would just kind of take it. Then came 9/11. And I went to a different school district, which was like even more white. And that was really tough for me because like now like the bullying got really tough where it was like, I was getting like, I came home with like bloody lips handful of times. People were like tearing my turban off my head. How old were you at that point? I was middle school. So I was probably 10 years old was when 9/11 happened. So from 10 until like 13-ish, it was like probably the toughest. And so like I just remember a lot of times like I had people like throw my books on the ground, I was spit on. A lot of things like that happened. But I never told my parents really, besides the time I'd come home like looking like a mess. But like my parents also didn't understand the system, so like no one ever told their teacher or the principal. Like that wasn't a thing. Like I just had to learn to either deal with it or learn to fight back. That was it. And so that made me kind of tough in the sense of like, because I know that it can go two ways. Either it makes you or breaks you. And I was fortunate where like it really gave me tough skin. And so when I decided to kind of do different things, I was also kind of like not accepted now by my family. And all these things were like, I'm just going to kind of do me and do what I think is right. And so then when it came to business, there's been a lot of kind of quote unquote pressure from people saying, oh, maybe you shouldn't look like that. You'll be able to go further. And for me, that's more fuel where it's like, all right, watch me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Watch. Yeah, I love that.
So it doesn't bother me now.
So you turn it into a driving force.
I was able to turn it into a driving force, and I honestly don't really notice it. Like I get the comments on YouTube, oh, it's Osama bin Laden or this and that all the time, but like it's funny to me. Like it doesn't bother me even the slightest.
Are you on TikTok?
I am on TikTok. And
it's
the younger generation of people.
Holy shit, dude. TikTok comments are like, they're like art. They're really bad, but they're creative.
And I don't really notice it. And I was in Pennsylvania recently. This is like a kind of a rural part of Pennsylvania. And I was with somebody, and they were like, dude, people are staring at you. I was like, they are? No, sorry, it wasn't Pennsylvania. This was a rural part of Michigan. That's why. And I was with like some people, and they were like, dude, people are staring at you. I was like, they are? I had no idea. Like, you don't even notice it.
Yeah, they probably recognize me from YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't even realize
They
what was
probably follow
happening.
me.
It doesn't bother me at all anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it is. I think because I've been really battling this in my mind of the last few years, because I've been asked this question a lot, right? Since the last few years, it's been really getting highlighted, and I'm just so naive. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't know, but a big part of me is starting to think I probably have, and I just think I didn't let it register, maybe, I guess, right? But also, I will say, so I got into a program called Meyerhoff. So my whole story, just to go back real quick so pre-med,
Yeah.
I was gonna be a doctor. I don't know. I think it's like a rite of passage if you're Indian. Like you just have to, at least attempt it. My family does have a lot of doctors. My parents, I don't think they were quite that committed to the cause, but like I as a kid figured out that I wanted to be a doctor, because I did a very simple correlation. Who in our community has the nicest cars, biggest houses, most respect? It was always a doctor. So I was like, great, I'll be a doctor. Until like I started going to biology class and was like, I'm going to kill myself. Like this is not going to be me. So I studied really hard during high school, and I got, and my dad, by the way, 6th grade, put me in Sylvan Learning Center for English. Right around probably the same age. My English wasn't great. My math was okay. But for SATs, not MCATs. Your parents were one step ahead.
Yeah.
I was for the SATs. And so
That
I
makes
took
more
my
sense
first
that way.
SAT in 6th grade. And I outscored
Wow.
my sister, who was in 12th grade.
Holy moly.
And I still hold it over her till this day. I still remind her all the time that I'm smarter than her. So I took my first SAT in 6th grade. And so I got into a really, really amazing program called Meyerhoff, which is they pick 70 students out of the world, right? Mostly out of the U.S. apply. And it's a minorities program. It's for science. It's for excellence in science. And really what they want is you to go get a PhD. And if you want an MD too, that's fine, but then they ask you to go get an MD, PhD. But if you get into the program, again, very selective, full scholarship, full this, full that, you are creme de la creme in the university. You're practically carried to class on people's shoulders. It's like a very prestigious thing to be in that program. And full scholarship. They actually pay $3,000 a year to go to school for your books and stuff. And your freshman year, you start getting recruited by all the Ivy Leagues to come to your med school, PhD, whatever. So I was there freshman year, within a few weeks, in private meetings with Harvard and Stanford and Princeton and all these, because they start to try to get you, because, so you're made. This is like, hey, I'm made. I'm going to be a brain surgeon, probably go to Harvard. I'm going to be like that guy. So my parents are all about it, proud, telling everybody. It took me 2 weeks to be like, uh-oh, like what have I done? But in this program, you have to go through a summer camp. This summer camp was one of the most interesting, eye-opening moments of my life. It's like boot camp. It's like being in the military, but it's for studying. It's super weird. So nerdy, dude. So nerdy, all right? 6 weeks, you are not allowed to leave the campus. You have to go to bed by a certain time. You have to get up by a certain time. You have to do all these like academic exercises, right? So whereas like in military camp, maybe you have to do like 50 push-ups. Here, you have to name 50 people in the group. So like you got to go around, you got to know everyone by their name, and then they'll ask you, give me one fact about this person. What they're doing is training you to build like this intense community, getting to know each other, which I will say played out real well because we all became really close. But during this time, we'd have these off hours for a couple hours where we could like mingle with one another. And so the community's largely got a lot of minorities in it. And they would talk a lot about racism and growing up in it. And I'm like, what the heck is guys talking about? And that was that community that brought, because a lot of them from like Georgia and like all these states I hadn't even visited in my life. And I just kind of came to learn like, wow, I grew up in an area where it's a little bit more cocktail, so maybe it's been a little bit less, but you said it hasn't in your business, so you haven't felt like when you're like getting a sponsor or trying to do a deal or whatever, like that's been a problem really at all.
No, not on that side, but I'll tell you, I think the first time I tried to outreach to media was probably 2016, right around the election time. And this is when I first really kind of built like a unique, let's call it unique relationship with the media, where I would like pitch ideas. I was like, I want to talk about this in the economy or this, I'm building this brand. And the responses that I got, maybe it was a little bit after 2016, it was like, yeah, we're not interested right now, but how about we talk about racism in Trump's America? I'm like, I'm trying to build a brand. Like, like that's not what I'm trying to go after, right?
So they're literally, they are being racist.
They're trying to throw like, just the way that it was phrased, where it's like almost like, look, yeah, dude, look, racism exists, period. But I don't want that to consume me, and I don't want that to be like I can't achieve what I want. But like, it is my, if somebody's racist towards me, that's more fuel towards me, right? It's like haters, man. Like in business, you go through this curve where in the beginning, everyone doubts you. Like, what the heck are you doing? Then you get a little bit of success. You're the underdog story. Everybody wants you to succeed. Everyone's behind you. Then if you keep growing, you make it to the top. Everybody hates you. Everybody wants to bring you down. So it's like, they all have their own curves, but it's like, where do you want to put your attention to? And so, that's, for me, in terms of getting sponsors and all that, I don't think it's affected it one bit.
And even if it has, you probably just keep rolling past
keep
it
growing,
and go find the ones that it doesn't affect and
You
get there.
You got to focus on you.
I love that though. Turn it into fuel, and it doesn't and it doesn't just go to racism. It goes to any adversity you're facing. You can either choose to let it either stop you or fuel you. We were talking about a few things before this, and I call it the old lemon into lemonade. We face issues that can be in some people's minds catastrophic. They can be Armageddon-ish, where it's like the end of things, and I'm like, I just don't see it that way. Because I refuse to go out that way. So I'm like, no, I'm going to figure out how to spin this thing and turn it into my power, which for you was like, oh, so I can't get big with looking like this? Well, watch me, right? Watch me. And that's like, it's every morning you've got a bigger cause you're fighting for. Powerful stuff, man. It's seriously, it's been fun and awesome watching you grow. And having just kind of seen where you're taking things and now how you're kind of going to and there's so many synergies just between, like I talked about, even from when we started studying English for professional exams to almost becoming a doctor to now, like you're going into the media business with the newsletters. That's exactly what we're doing here at Learn. And it's just refreshing to see that a lot of, we entrepreneurs who've been around it for a long time kind of go through the same loop, and we kind of learn the same lessons and we arrive at the same places. Man, first of all, where can people go to like just follow you, stalk you, learn from you, give you money?
Oh, well, thank you for the kind words. I have a lot of content on YouTube, Minority Mindset. If you want to check out the newsletters, you can go to briefs.co. We have a free newsletter for investors called Market Briefs. We have a free newsletter for entrepreneurs called Business Briefs. We keep you up to date on the latest business trends. All that's free, or theminoritymindset.com. So, yeah.
Yeah, love. I would highly recommend everybody follow him on YouTube. It's fun to watch. Your content is really, really good. It's captivating. It's fun to watch. And just even as a marketer, if you're watching, just watch what he does. Like today, it was funny because he walked into my office and I had his videos up on my screen and I was like, dude, I'm not stalking you. I was literally telling one of my team members about you. But then I noticed real quick, I'm like, something I don't do in my videos, you pinned the first comment with a link. And I'm like, damn it. We don't do any of that. That's brilliant. Jimmy, we got to do that. We got to like pin the first comment with a URL and pin it. I'm like, I have 500,000 followers almost. And I've like never thought to do that. So it's fun to just, and it's not something he told me. Actually, you mentioned it in passing. And as you said, I looked over, I'm like, son of a gun. Like that's something I got to do. So you can learn a lot by following. Closing words, something to share with our audience, just, something that's on your mind or any thoughts you have or.
The world is in your hands. Go out and get it. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like. You can achieve anything that you want if you're willing to put in the work, if you have the discipline, and if you're willing to learn, and if you're willing to fail. If you have these 4 things, nothing can stop you. Don't let anybody, it doesn't matter who they are, go out, make those happen, because we only live once.
Dang, powerful words, man. It was awesome. Thank you, Jaspreet, all the way from Detroit here in our Learn Center. Thanks for being here. Thanks for this awesome episode. Guys, you know what to do. Hit subscribe, hit like, leave a comment. If you're listening to us on the audio channels, make sure you subscribe. Leave us a great review. The Onyx Singhala Show, come on. Let's get it into every door we possibly can. Love you guys, and as I always say, when life pushes you, stand straight, smile, and push it the heck back. We'll see you on the next one. Love you. Bye.